A mí no me quema mamá, a mí no me quema papá, a mí no me quema nada, ni la candela ni la guarra. With us in our studio, really Richie's studio, is Emily Rose, and did I say that right?
No, it's Emily Pearl. Like, am
Emily, why do I keep saying?
Well, the thing is, my Instagram handle is Emily Rose, but I mostly like to go by Emily Pearl.
Okay, Emily Pearl.
Yeah.
So, and also I got a painting in the bathroom. You got like 3 or 4 pieces.
Yeah.
Here, and one of them says Rose on there. So I knew you as that when you were here like
Okay.
2.5 years ago.
It's the
But
association.
yeah, exactly. But nonetheless, Emily Pearl here is from Miami.
Welcome back.
Welcome home. When'd you get in?
I got in on Tuesday night.
Nice.
That was a long flight.
And
How long
also
had
we
it
got
been?
Richie. Richie, hello.
Oh, yeah.
Hello.
I know, we're just jumping right into the conversation. Yeah, what's up? Richie here.
Hey.
Podcast, BWOMs, all that stuff. And we got Valentin,
Hola.
a.k.a. Valentino or Valentine. You know, people always
There's no
tend to
AKA
do that.
Valentino.
No, I'm going by like common misconceptions of names.
Gotcha.
Off of the theme.
Off of the way I started,
Yeah, because I've always asked people, hey, how's that Valentino doing? Like, who?
He's selling a lot of clothes still. He's doing great.
Now, if you ask about Valentin,
That's a whole different story. Buy him a drink when you see him somewhere.
It's always the last letter that makes a difference.
Oh man, but no, it's cool to do this little impromptu session. Sit down and talk a little bit about what you've been experiencing in your travels and the development of your art. So, how long had it been since you've been back in town?
The thing is, I do a little visiting here
Okay.
and there, and the last time that I came to El Paso was in September of 2020. Couldn't do much because it was like pandemic wise,
Right.
but the last one before that, it was February 2020. So I only do 2 visits a year to El
Okay.
Paso.
What
But
yeah.
but yeah, the last time that I lived here was 2018.
Okay. Yeah. But even then, that's still pretty sparsed out. Like, and I always have to ask this from people who are coming back home. Like, what do you look forward to the most? Obviously, aside from like family, like what smells, what tastes, what sounds of here do you miss and look forward to when you get back?
One of the things that I miss is like, the smells, the noise, and everything. I don't know if you guys ever watched the Netflix show Taco Chronicles. Have you
Yeah,
ever?
I've seen it.
You've
I've
seen it?
Yeah,
The
yeah,
intro
it's-
music of like all you hear is like the señor taking the orders of the burritos, and then
Yeah.
you just hear the sizzling of the stoves. That's the thing that I miss the most, honestly.
Man, that's a great image.
Yeah.
I have to check that out for sure.
Yeah, Taco Chronicles is the best.
Yeah, it is. It is a great series. I've seen some of the ones where they go into. They go into. I saw one where they were in. I want to say Guadalajara or and also L.A. That.
Oh,
that,
yeah,
that,
the
that,
LA.
that was pretty. That's a great concept, great series. What are you doing now in Miami?
I'm currently an art student in the Miami International University of Art and Design. Such a handful of a name, but it's under the Art Institutes, colleges.
Right.
I got in and I wanted to pursue visual arts as a bachelor's. 2 years in, 2 more years to go. But one of the things that I realized was a mission for me to go to Miami is because nobody really has heard of the Chicano culture that much, or it's not that big. So me going to Miami and me presenting myself, I'm a Chicana, I'm from El Paso, everybody's like, who? Who? What's a Chicano?
Who?
¿Qué te
What?
chuco? ¿Qué?
Did you get on a car on Windham with a bullhorn and say, "I'm a Chicana
Yeah.
from El Paso"?
From El Paso.
Yeah. I'm here.
They noticed the difference of me. The way that I talk, I didn't talk like normal Miami person. The way that I carry myself, I wasn't very... Everybody in Miami is very dressed up, very like, they take care of their self-image a lot. And for me, I'm just comfortable. I just try to, just be nice to people. And there's always like a whole difference. You could tell I'm not from there.
Yeah, I've been to Miami a couple times. Both times I've been to Miami was first time I was doing political video content creation work for the Mi Familia Vota, and it was during the Mitt Romney and Barack Obama election, I don't know, 2008, 2010,
2008.
something like that. And I did 24 city tour with some people from the SCIU and Mi Familia Vota, and the last stop was Miami-Dade County, or yeah, right, that's what it's
Yeah,
called.
Miami-Dade.
Yeah, and I was writing comic books at that point for the organization to pass out to the people from the constituencies of that county, and it was just to get rid of the voter intimidation, fraud situations that were prevalent there and during that time, and probably still so. But it was very Caribbean, where it's a lot of Dominicans, a lot of Dominicanos, a lot of Puerto Ricans, and so yeah, it's a whole different set of. You got the ocean there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole difference. Is you got like the beach.
Well, the culture shock thing is interesting. Well, not the shock again. Like I said, there's just like a difference, and like you said, you stood out. And we weren't recording yet, but you talked about how you pretty much kind of had to design an elevator pitch for what's Chicana. Like, do you want to like share a little bit about that?
My elevator pitch for Chicano.
Okay, I'm timing it. 2-minute elevator pitch.
2 minutes.
Action.
Well, Chicano art came from the Chicano movement during the 1970s. And how I like to explain it is that during the Civil Rights Movement, we had the Black Panthers. We also had the Chicanos, either with the SH or like the XI, like how they spell it. It just went to a movement where Mexican Americans weren't getting their rights. A lot of them were like young kids, marching for their parents' rights. A lot of them being deported. A lot of laws written to exile them out of the country. And they started doing protests, marches, creating art. That was a big thing. There is a lot of murals in El Paso and like in the southern border cities about that movement. And it just became like an art form. How Chicano art is basically the suffrage of Mexican Americans and the culture of Mexican Americans. I like to say it that way. I know that I did like a whole essay on it, and there's like even over 100 murals here in El Paso about the Chicano movement in the 70s, and I still find it a mission to find all of them, even though it's hard because some of them have been stripped away, painted over. But I say that Chicano art comes from that, and it has grown into like different subcultures like the Pachuco, Chicano, Cholo, but it all comes to that one movement in the 70s.
Yeah.
How would you describe your elevator pitch on Chicano?
No, I think you did great. But I was actually more curious, like, you mentioned how the term has evolved over time, Chicano to Chicana. And even, like, I know there have been big debates within the movement over the years on how to approach that, again, using the X, as the ch sound. There's a lot of different movements. So I'm curious to you as a 21-year-old and your art, where do you see yourself today? Like, how do you see that movement today?
That movement, I see it still
and
growing.
You was part of it,
Yeah, no, thank you for saying that. I still see it growing. I still see a lot of artists of El Paso and even like different parts of the country, like California, like their movement is so big. El Paso, there's a little one growing in Miami as well. But I see it growing a lot, and especially a lot of like musical artists that are taking that culture, whether it be from fashion, slogans, or like the movement itself, especially right now, like how we're going through another civil rights movements. People are bringing it today, and I still think that it's a culture that's never going to fade. It's only going to change and adapt to something better, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's inspiring to hear you talking like this, because I've just been so away from the term for a very long time, and not by like sort of design or running away from or anything like that. Just a default of the work that I do now, and where I'm at with my work as a writer and a filmmaker, and but a lot of it I remember now that you're talking. I do remember a lot of my pursuits and invariably for me, when they asked what Chicanismo was or Chicano was, and when I was with a friend of mine in Phoenix who's a hip hop artist, this guy Merlin Hepworth, and his friend who ran the Mesa Arts program up there in Mesa, Arizona, was Amanda Tripoli, and she asked me, what we're at informally at a house, just having avocado tacos and wine and all the good stuff, and and so she asked me, and I, not like it wasn't like a podcast, like what is Chicano to you? It was just more like it really happenstance, and I told her for me it's really a matter of I think the core of it is the right to have the same opportunity to do what you want to do in this country and in the U.S. And whether you're the same rights that somebody from the Midwest, an Irish kid from Brooklyn would want to, or Asian kid from Oakland would want to, and or somebody from Austin would want to. You want to be an engineer? Cool, you have the same set of opportunities. I mean, and that's kind of maybe a naive way of saying it, because the build up to those same recognition of opportunities is probably different and premised off the reason why the Chicano movement started in the first place, right? But at that point, it's just a matter that of your choice to want to be. If you want to be a businessman, you have the right. You have the same opportunity that anybody else would have. You want to be a social worker. It's not for me. It had to transcend, because I came from such a Mexican class, working class, not even Mexican working class, more like just Juarez entrepreneurs, and like you had to be making money. It's got to bring home something tangible, and so that entrepreneurial thing that you get on the frontera, is different from the Chicanismo that I was learning formally at UTEP, in Chicano classes, which was primarily based off of the UFW and in California.
Yep.
So for me, it's a different formation on the border, being from Juarez and El Paso. And I'm from El Paso first generation, but I'm equally from Juarez by default to my family, my cousins,
Yeah.
So it's a kind of a different, for me, it's always been something that is, in constant flux, I guess, because I'm in constant flux. And
I personally, like, I feel the same way in some degree, because I feel like I was always in the middle of like Juarez and El Paso. My mom was born and raised in Juarez. She moved when she was young to El Paso, but she always had that Mexican culture. My mom's side is more Juarez culture, Chihuahua, Mexican, traditional Catholic. That was their tradition. But on my dad's side of family, they're always been Mexican American. So it was mostly the Chicano culture. It's mostly like, like lowriders.
Yeah.
Even my dad was into the lowriders and all that. I like to call him a true G, but my mom was like the one who raised me and all that. And so I always felt like I am Mexican. I feel like I am more like from Juarez, but there's also the El Paso Mexican American in me. And I always tried to find, like, I am the middle child. Like, I am the little creation of those two cultures. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? Well, like for me, in all honesty, like, I grew up in the projects. Like I grew up in the Sandoval. It's not no relation to my last name. It was in the West Side projects. My mom, single parent, 4 kids on her own, and then we went to the Kennedys, and then we went to the Marmolejos. Those are about some of the top 5 most, violent, or not violent, but just, crazy projects you can grow up with in El Paso. And I was like taking care of my 2 older brothers and my sister who went to UNT, and like, and they never let me wear Cortez when I was a kid. I wanted to. They're like, no, you're not going that route. And I started getting into, instead of the oldies, I got into Depeche Mode. I got into like Guns N' Roses, and ironically in El Paso, you're afforded those, nuanced, stratified cultural affiliations, because there's such the ratio of mestizos to the traditional other cities in America is turned inside out.
Yeah.
So I was privileged enough not to want to be a cholo. I grew up with cholos. They're my homies and friends, but I didn't want to dress like them. I didn't want to look like them. And oftentimes my older brothers were like, like Mexicano, kind of like, big dudes, and like, and they didn't dress like that, and so, and then yet we grew up with the homies and the cholos, and there's our families. So oftentimes there was fights within that even identity of what it is to be, and we weren't pursuing the flag of Chicanismo. As a matter of fact, I was getting away from it when I was a kid, just because I wanted my ex-girlfriend, top 10 in her class, was going to, she could have gone to Johns Hopkins, could have gone anywhere, and she was like hanging out with all of her friends from Laredo and Eastwood and Hanks and Coronado, that were all like higher education based, going into Ivy League and law school, med school, and I wanted so bad to be a part of their circle. Or her, at least. I was all in love with her, and I wanted to be part of that whole world. So it was this whole thing, but at the same time, my soul was with the people, and in high schools, I did 5 high schools, so I got to know all the homies, and I got to know all, like, party, with all the punk rockers and the alternative kids. And I grew up in the grunge movement with, when Kurt Cobain came into the picture and the, all that, I was like, whoa, cool. It was like this burgeoning sense of identities that are multiple. So when I got into college, that's when I became more aware of a sort of a political consciousness, although I did not fully affiliate with the farm working component of the UFW and Chicanismo out of California. I didn't look like him. I didn't dress like him. I was different. I was a fronterizo that grew up with half fresas, half hipsters, half punk rockers, half tough guys, half jocks. So for me, it was like this whole kind of thing that is just different, and so that's always been why for me Chicanismo is sort of always in flux, this kind of thing.
Of course, yeah. There's always different subcultures to it. One of the things that I like to ever create an artwork of, like a series of artwork, is the documentation of El Paso's punk and rock scene. I think that's one of the things that is overlooked. I always see like murals either like the cholos or like like the hardworking, like working class Mexicans and all that, but I want to see more of like the rock movement, the punk movement, because that's the one that I grew up on my mom's side of the family. It's like, again, my mom like grew up like in the grunge movement, my aunts in like the 2000s, my uncles 2000s as well, and they influenced me a lot. And I think El Paso has a really great rock movement. Moving to Miami, there's not any rock movement
Interesting.
Yeah. Even with like at the drive-in,
Yeah.
The Sparta, Mars Volta, and everybody talks about like them, who I just mentioned, and Khalid, and who rightfully so, they all deserve their place for being ambassadors. Khalid probably the most of them for El Paso, right? Mm-hmm. Greg Gonzalez, who's in the Lower Valley and Cigarettes After Sex. Everybody forgets about him. He became bigger than at the drive-in. At least numbers-wise. Not numbers, in terms of views and YouTube and links and his world travels. And I grew up with him in college. He had a band called the NX Truants. He was a keyboarder and long hair, punk rocker looking, quirky dude, and I had him for 2-3 classes in school. And I did his first music video as Cigarettes After Sex when he was, working different shows here. And so it makes me very happy that he went off and became one of the biggest acts in the world in his genre, which is pretty esoteric. You have to go to Brooklyn and play in that circle and come out in Tiny Desk and like KEXP in Seattle and become self-sustained multi-millionaire artist that develops his own genre and is able to do what he wants globally. That's El Paso for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love being able to go on YouTube and watch one of his videos and have people in the comment section, reading like, "Oh, I didn't know he was from El Paso. I just found this out today," and people being all excited about it. That's because it's a great discussion, and so I know it seems like you're interested a lot in history and obviously the culture. And I noticed that in your art page, you're really interested in representing real people. So what does that mean to you?
Real people for me, it's people who represent El Paso without being like the cliches. Mm-hmm. I always find, not always, but most of the time I find art boring when it's such a, socially accepted beauty standard, either a model, a woman, or something like that. I want to show more of the things that people don't see often. Like, like one of my paintings was a señora with her son on her back, and they're crossing the border. You could see she's not Instagram ready. She doesn't have the makeup on or anything, but that's real. Yeah. That's what's going on. You see how tired she is, how much she has like sacrificed in order to bring her family crossing the border. I like to take real people, as in like people who are like from the streets. I always take inspiration from that. Like I'll either see them do something very mundane, like just like, oh, like they're just cooking or they're just smoking a cigarette. But taking that and capturing that, that's El Paso. That's the culture. I like real people. I love people watching. I like to travel for that reason. I don't like to just go to like, oh, like this is the most famous landmarks to go. No, I just want to walk through the streets, drink a coffee, look around, sketch, ask people if I could take their photos, and get inspiration from there.
Awesome. Who are some of your inspirations, stylistically speaking?
Stylistically, El Mac.
Okay.
I love him. When I saw him work on the mural in Miami, because he did one for Wynwood Walls, and that was such an amazing thing to see. He did like a huge building, like I would say like 13 feet tall building, spray painted some kids. And another reason why El Mac is a great inspiration for me is because the kids that he painted on the wall, he went a day ahead to go to Overtown, which is right next to Wynwood Walls, and he interviewed some kids. Like he just went to like a school, talked to them, took pictures of them and all that stuff, photographing with like flowers and all that stuff. Then he took some of the photographs, he picked the models, and he painted them on the wall.
Yeah.
That's what I call real people. And El Mac's work is all about real people, like the one from El Paso, the one that we have downtown. That's El Paso strong right there. Like that's what represents El Paso. Again, he just met this guy, talked to him for a bit, got to know his story, photographed him, painted him, and now it's one of the most recognized murals in El Paso.
Absolutely. What have been some of the, in your explorations and search of the murals of El Paso, Chicano murals, what have you discovered?
My explorations, just a lot of history, I would say. Just things that I never thought that like I would find across. I would think that I would find murals about like, Mexican American and all that, but a lot of them like talk about issues about their own self, like their own stories. I know where my dad was, where he grew up in. I forgot where it was, but it's in the barrio near Jeff, Jeff, I would say. There was some murals there that like you could see it faintly, but you could see that it's like a face, like people there. They're drawing their culture there, and that's what I like. I like that they're drawing their people, what they see. It could be their friend, their father, or anything. No, we don't know, but that's what they want to express. They want to express, that is El Paso to me. That is what I'm fighting for these rights for them, for my family, for my brothers and sisters, for my future kids, and for future generations to come. And that's what has like attracted me to it. I like the whole real people, real culture movement for me when it comes to my art.
Yeah, awesome. I think I used to. There's a book that Miguel Juarez did, and then it was Cynthia Farah, my professor of filmmaking when I was 19 years old. Went to Stanford, and she came to teach film at UTEP for a few years, married into the Fada family, and then she built her family, had a daughter, Alexa, and I got to know her really well. She was a great mentor and a friend of mine, and she did the photography for the books about the murals in El Paso, and have you seen that book? Have you know what I'm talking? What's it called? Do you know the book?
I don't remember what it's called, but they did a pretty good research.
Miguel Juarez is a PhD now. He's
amazing.
Researcher.
Yeah, I need to know that book so I could buy it.
Yeah. There's also I know Carlos Callejos.
Mm-hmm.
You know Carlos Callejos.
Mm-hmm.
I met him when I was your age, working at La Fe Clinic when I first met Simi, this another artist that he's pretty big, and he's I think all over the country, for that matter. But he's here, and I know we've been friends, and for often for years now, and spent time in Albuquerque as well. So I got to be pretty schooled in I remember the first project that I did was a play, and we hired through a non organization. I'm sorry, through a grant for El La Fe, hired Simi and Mask Victor, who's a mask artist. Back then he was 17. Wow. Simi was like 20, 21, and so was I, and so it was really cool to see like the growth of all of us. Where they gone as artists and where I've gone in my own pursuits. Where on occasions we'll run into each other, and there's always that regard for the place and time, because for me ultimately it's the finding the place where your reflections in your craft, I deal with them cathartically because I need to. Otherwise the brain damage would overwhelm me, and out of the experiences I've had throughout life. So I utilize art, more so as reflection for an expression and a kind of an augmenting of the lived experience in a unique timeline. And so these cats played a certain role in my life, and they're, for me, they're definitive Chicano artists as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
For you, Emily, and for anyone who's listening right now, the book is actually called Colors on Desert Walls.
That's right.
Colors on Desert Walls.
Yes.
Definitely worth checking out.
I want to do, I was there for about a month, and I went to like the Coral Gables area of Miami, and I was doing the marketing work for a construction company that designed hotels, for the infrastructures and stuff. And so I went down there, but I got this really cool sense of like Americana in Miami there, and the fact that you're there presenting your work and doing murals in that area says a lot, So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
That must be really fulfilling, especially when you're there,
Yeah, one of my favorite murals that I have, and it's actually the biggest mural that I've ever done. I think like 17 feet high with like 26 feet wide or something like that. That one's like my most proudest work. It's at the university. I call it Desert Flowered in Miami Waters, for the fact that it's me as the main subject of the mural, with my hair wet, submerging myself with the crocodile on my shoulders. Damn. And the Miami like leaves and all that. But I like it because that's how I felt. I felt like a desert flower, because I always associated my work into like desert flowers and associating women to that.
Does it change your color scheme?
The colors, if you notice that my colors that I had before on my paintings that I had here, I would always use like blues and yellows, because it symbolizes like the desert sand and like the blue sky. And the mural that I had for that, it's like a red, grays and blacks, and a blue. And the reason why is because the red is so like intense. That's how I felt the whole thing. I felt Miami so intense at that time. And the blue is because of the ocean waters. Most of my art right now, I have tried to kept it the same as I had in El Paso, but now I just been experimenting more and, looking more of the history of Chicano culture and try to associate that with being in Miami.
Awesome.
I think a lot of women, they're like Chicanas especially, they know how to get things done. I'm very, like, when you're talking about her, I'm like, oh my God, I'm overachieving. I over-competitive. That's the type of personality I am. That's how I got to Miami. That's how I got that mural up there. I didn't rest. I'm always like reworking things. I may think something is good, but in my mind, I'm like, no, gotta do something better. And another reason why I'm like that is because of my mom. My mom made me the woman that I am today. I thank her a lot. Mom, if you're listening, thank you so much for making me be this artist right now and for believing in me, because she was the one who always believed in me. Everybody else, as all artists have gotten like comments saying that, are you sure you want to do art? That's not like a stable income. You should try doctors, or you should try like something more professional.
Well, you got really nice advice there. My advice is even more horrible than that. It was like, why do you think you know? No, like the complete, yeah. So it's a rarity to have, support and but that your mom gave it to you, and now you carry that torch.
And especially in Mexican American cultures or even Latino cultures, it's really hard to be a creative in that family because they always expect you to have a good income, family, wedding. That's kind of what they want you to follow, something traditional. And for me, for my mom wanting me to like move outside of the box, single mom as well. She raised me by her own. She believed in me, and now I'm just striving to do my best, not only for like El Paso, but for her.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. And that comes across. It comes across in your work, and it's a very right. Like that's one thing that you want to do. Like aside from the back and forth of the love and hate you may have for your hometown, and however you go up and down or however you flow, you want to represent here well, right? Like there's been a few times where I'm like, oh man, that was not my best represent. I'm like, I could have done, and you think, what can I do to get? But ultimately, like you want, like I want my brothers as much as we might have fought with each other or the cynicism ensued in your family or whatnot. You want them to see what you're doing and just be like deep down inside, like before they go to bed, like at peace with you, or like your nephews and your nieces to be like that's my uncle, that's my aunt, like
Yeah.
that I'll torch the heavens for that. I'll flip inside out in the universe for that kind of love from my family. At my best when I'm and I think that's a very El Paso kind of thing, right? Like a chip on your shoulder that you got something to prove, that you want to really do something and represent, because it really fully hasn't been represented the way it should in the past. And when it does, changes the world. You get bands like At the Drive-In, you get people like Khalid, you get people like Greg Gonzalez, you get a whole slew of, not just in the music realm, you get a bunch of painters and engineers and and Juarez. In my case as a filmmaker, I've gotten some of the the best mentorship and technical training from Juarense filmmakers that'll run circles around me in terms of like the physics of things. And so at least, what I learned here is like the up and down, like the control of your listening and humble and bombastic self. When can you be humble and when can you be bold about it? And how do you merge that into something that is positive and beneficial.
Yeah. It's the greatest mentors have always been El Paso.
Yeah.
I've had good mentors in Miami. It's more of the technical things like, oh, have your portfolio like this, have your things like that. But the ones who made me realize that this is representing your culture should be something you should do would be my mentors from Bel Air High School. That's where I went.
That's crazy. That's where I went too.
Really?
That's where I graduated from. I went to Bel Air freshman year. I didn't get 1 credit, but 0.5 credits for playing basketball. All I was doing was hanging out with all the dead at birth of a gang of a bunch of skaters and punkers, and then all the nasty boy, all these gang kids, all these hipster kids, And I went to Montwood for a month, Del Valle for a month, and then I left to Alamogordo High, New Mexico for a month. Came back. I went to Eastwood in the summertime, and then went back to Bel Air, and I graduated from Bel Air. So I did 5 high schools, but we have the same alma mater,
Yeah.
So how crazy is that?
Yeah, I know. I didn't know that, but Bel Air has something special, especially with their art.
Would love to hear more about your art. We've talked about, common, subjects of taking everyday life. I know, like you said, the mundane, but for many of us, that's like the magical. Especially if it's related to just memories, nostalgia, where we grew up, home, family, all that good stuff. I'm curious about like your, talking to anyone who has a craft, how it's developed from like when you first started. That might be as a kid, maybe studying in middle school or high school, to now going to school for that. Like what's kind of been like the arc of what you've kind of discovered about yourself as an artist and your style and development?
Well, the way that everything all started was since I was little. My family has always been like creatives on my mom's side. They always been into art, music, and all that. So everything came from watching like my uncle and my grandpa draw. Eventually, it turned into me being more interested in art in elementary school and middle school, joining into competitions. But it wasn't until high school that I started realizing the talent, the craft that I had, and how I had a responsibility to show it to an audience and to express the story. Again, like my best mentors were from like Beller High School. Teacher Ramiro Ordóñez, he taught me a lot of things. He taught me to not be afraid of the culture that you grow up in, because as he was saying, like there's a lot of people that they become shy from their culture and they try to like drive away from it. They're like, no, I'm not this Chicano, I'm not this Mexican American, I'm just American. But he taught me to be okay with it, to express it, and to show your culture through it. And so I started creating arts like El Miclo, started creating arts like Contemplando, the one with the girl in her suit, doing my first portrait with the sunflower and cactuses. So all that came from that experience and me being okay with my culture. And during that time, my mom also taught me everything that there is to know about being Mexican American, whether it be like from the culture itself or taking me to Juarez more often, or just to watch documentaries and listen to music, talking in Spanish more in the house, because it turned into this thing where I would mostly talk in English and I started losing my Spanish a lot. But now, thanks to that experience that I have, and now going into college, doing more research, being away from home and missing that culture, it brought me to full circle. Now I do art that represents Chicano. I do art that represents home. I do art that represents real people.
It's a perfect combination.
Yeah.
It sounds like. I mean, the fact to even think about, you use the word responsibility. I think it's a pretty good way of saying it. Like as an artist, what you represent, how it's viewed, it says a lot. So, that's great. And so now that you're in school and studying, we talked about you'll have to develop a portfolio and all that. And do you have aspirations beyond graduation? Do you want to stay in school and study more? I don't know. Have you thought about that?
My aspirations after that is that I do want to finish my school, have a kick-ass portfolio.
Yeah.
But as I was saying, my first plan is to come back to El Paso. Not only because I miss home, but because El Paso is always growing in the art community, and I don't want to miss it. So I want to kind of come back with like a good degree, a good art experience, and to show more of what I could do than what I did before. But again, if something happens in Miami, I could stay there. Or if I get a master's scholarship, I could go somewhere else.
Yeah. It's good. It sounds like there's a lot of options.
Yes, of course.
That's wonderful.
What are you, what are you painting right now? What are you working on right now?
Right now, I'm working my portfolio, as I was saying. So I want to do this big paintings, like, not that big, but it's like 4 feet by 5 feet paintings of portraits of Mexican American or just Mexican women. But the way that they're painted is almost like if you're looking at a Renaissance or like New Age art, like kind of like Caravaggio's art or like Da Vinci's, how he painted the Mona Lisa. I'm trying to get that style perfected, like the realism, emotion, elegancy, but in Chicano, because I think like a lot of our old culture, like like when it comes to the Aztecs and like the Mayans, even like the way that we're represented, we're always put in the label folk art, and I find that very, very inappropriate, because that's, to us, that's our art. Why don't we put folk art into when it comes to the Europeans' art, because it's around the same timeline. So I want to kind of create those like European paintings, but reimagine them into the Mexican Chicano art. That's what I envision. That's what I'm doing right now. the one that I'm doing right now is one of my friends. She's in a wedding dress, and the way that I'm painting her is like the detail on the silk of the dress, the little embroideries, the what's it called? I know it's like the little details, like her jewelry and all that. I want to capture all of that. Like if
All
it was
the
some
textures and
all the little textures. I'm a perfectionist. I love realism, so I want to get that done, but I want to give hints of the culture. Like the background is cactuses. She's holding like a little rosary necklace like on her arm, like everything that makes Chicana or like Mexican American is represented in a wedding dress, like in a wedding portrait. The next one I'm doing, I'm actually going to take photographs of her this weekend. It's a lady who like represents more of the norteño side of El Paso, because we have different subcultures. So like she's very like ranchera, norteño. Want to capture her because I feel like there's a lot of portraits of male norteño, like, you know, señores, señoras, you know, El Mac is one of them. Pero I think it's time for like showing the female representation of that. So it's just mostly going to be all women based, but the different subcultures of Mexican American.
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, representation seems like a key there in your you brought it up like about being a perfectionist, and so I always have to ask creators of any kind when they say this, like, do you ever know if a piece is done?
I could say 100% no. I never know when a piece is ever done.
Because
I never know. The one contemplando, sometimes I look at it and I'm like, I could fix that. I could. And sometimes pieces get finished because people tell me that's it. Give it a rest.
It's due.
It's due by this time. Give it a rest. But there's always something to fix.
Yeah,
in a perfectionist mind, in an artist mind, I would say. I think perfectionism is more for an artist than anything.
Yeah. Do you ever go back and, you know, if you...
Yes,
like,
I actually do.
I'm gonna add this little here.
Yes, the portrait that I have of me with the sunflower and the cactus, like, around me, the first time that I painted it, I didn't like how the proportions of the face came out. It didn't look like me. And plus, that was like my first hand of painting faces. So after like a few more pieces to go, I came back to it, redid the whole entire face. And it's a whole entire thing that I always go back on. The portrait that I'm doing of the girl with the wedding dress, under that painting was another painting that I was doing. But I didn't like how that came out. I didn't have a clear vision on it. It was more like of my professor saying that, oh, Day of the Dead, that's Mexican, do that. And I felt pressured into that.
Man.
And I didn't feel comfortable with it. So I just literally gessoed the whole entire painting, started all over again. And that canvas has been through a year of torture.
I can't wait to see that canvas.
Yeah.
Of torture. I'm sure it'll
The
be
canvas,
beautiful.
and you would see it if you put it in a light on the back of it. You could see the other painting behind it.
Yeah, I was trying to look for it on your. I'm not distracted on my phone. I was trying to like look through and see like reference what you're talking about here. Wow, you did sculpture too recently.
Yeah, I recently.
How was that experience?
First time doing sculpture. Again, perfectionist. The sculpture, in my own opinion, wasn't finished. But then again, people always say, my mom always say, it's your first time sculpting. Don't think that you're gonna come out with this like whole big like atom sculpture, like Louvre style. Don't think of that. But I was striving to be that way. But no, yeah, I enjoyed sculpture a lot actually, and especially sculpting people. It was easier for me to grasp their dimensions, like the way their noses are shaped, because I've always drawn people, like since I was like in high school. So I think that there will be more sculptures to come, actually, in my own opinion.
That's cool.
Right
I'll
on.
look forward.
They're just really heavy, and because they're ceramic, so.
Okay.
But I enjoy dabbling into new mediums. College made me dabble into new mediums. I did printmaking. I did like the one of the lowrider And that was like my dad's lowrider. I did a print make of that, sold it a bit. Doing more printmaking, I remember I did my own shirts for Chuco Chica. That's another thing. So I'll never stop learning. That's the thing. I will always have new projects coming, and especially new merch that is coming that I'm working with right now. So that's another thing to look forward to. But
Nice.
yeah.
What's some of the merch you got coming?
It's based on one of my murals, the one with the birds, the hummingbirds. And the reason why I like that mural a lot to be a shirt is because it's more of like siguiendo tus sueños, like following your dream. And that mural, going back to like the Aztec culture, I always do my research when it comes to paintings and murals. Aztec culture had like the hummingbirds as a guide for dreams. So the Aztecs always painted them as like, oh, if you follow these birds, they will take you to your dreams, to your desires. Or like in like the stories, that's what they're known for. They're dreams, flying dreams. So when I was like asked to do this mural, it was mostly like for upcoming people, like about art, like what makes you think like the university. And I'm like, it means to follow your dreams. So I painted the hummingbirds of 2 different hummingbirds, and that's what it means to me. It means following your dreams.
Awesome.
And another thing is with the cactuses, Miami doesn't know anything about cactuses.
Like, what
So
are those
anytime
things?
anytime they want me to do something, they're just like, the cactuses, they're really good.
Yeah, and they're not the sagoro that
Yeah.
most people associate with cactuses or cacti.
Yeah.
And the nopal that come with it.
Nopal.
Yeah, I was gonna say even I really like on that piece, like you drew a hummingbird in a way that I never really see. The one on the right with the way its wings are up, and I think that's a pretty neat depiction specifically because of that. I never see those wing patterns drawn that way.
Oh yeah, that. And the thing is that was like one of my favorite murals to do because it was finally me tackling into more realistic colors, I would say. Yeah. Not like the other one that I did. That was more like of an outline, kind of like black and white. But I think that was like a good mural. That's one of my favorites for sure. Nice. And I plan to make merch, and I am working with the local printer here. So
Beautiful.
Another thing
That's
is that
great.
I always want to come back to El Paso. I know there's many options in Miami to get your prints and probably cheaper because it's closer, but I like to support El Paso.
Hey, yeah, that's legit.
Right on.
So for people listening, I imagine it's a lot of friends and family. But for someone tuning in who's like, oh, I want to know more and check it out more, how can they connect with you? Do you have a website, or like what's the best method for them to
my
find that stuff?
website, starting off with like my website, it's www.emily-pearl.com. So it's a little dash mark in the middle of Emily Pearl. Full name Emily Pearl. My Instagram name is emly.rose. I know it's a little bit crazy, but that's the one that stick to it. Now people recognize me for that.
Yeah.
So Emily Rose without the I in Emily. Facebook, Emily Pearl Art. And I think that's it. I think that those are mostly all my social media.
Cool.
But yeah, in my Instagram, you would find my email if you ever want to contact for like commissions, or you could go on my website to buy merch. I still have some of my prints available. And yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, we gotta ask though before we leave. Like,
Okay.
What you get commissioned to do a mural here in El Paso? What's your subject?
If I was commissioned to do,
right. Like,
I would say Mexican American women.
okay.
I think representing it in a way that I've never seen before. Like, I really want to do a Mexican women, pero punk out, or like rocker, because I always see the same subject matter, and there's nothing wrong with it. That is what El Paso is, but I would like to see more of the scene that I grew up in, the rock punk scene.
There you go.
Awesome.
So I think Mexican women for sure always needs to be represented. But yeah, that's basically.
So awesome having you here.
Thank you.
You for thinking of us to stop by as you return home, and sharing your story, your insight, your piece of life, of where you're at now. So
Thank you for having my art pieces a home.
No, our pleasure. They fit right in. They fit right in. They don't fit right in. They accentuate. Yeah. So thank you very much for who you are.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks.
I really appreciate this.